Hello there. This is Andy, one of the founding members of this group. I run this with Gary. As you know, you'll see Gary put a lot of recent information up on the site, and we are growing by the day. The reason we put this group together is not to sell you anything. It's a completely non-hype group. In fact, that's what we're trying to get away from. It's a very scary thing when you first get diagnosed with diabetes. It's there with us for life. Currently, there are no known cures for type 2 diabetes. And you can get bewildered and depressed and anxious and all those things and not quite know where to turn. And I know country from country varies greatly on the amount of information you're given. I'm from the UK. I live in Spain now, but when I was in the UK, I was diagnosed and basically given a pamphlet, and out you go into the world. You're diabetic, and there were support groups and things, but they were all saying the same things. But there was a lot of misinformation, and that's really what this group is about, to try and get you through that misinformation. We don't want people falling for the hype. We don't want people being told that they can cure their diabetes and reverse their diabetes by using some new found thing that's been found in the Amazon jungle. And it's all nonsense. It's just people creating products out of nothing to sell to other people who are desperate or in need or are scared and vulnerable. And that's wrong. That's just plain wrong. And the misinformation about diabetes is huge. It's one of the conditions that is talked about so much, but absolutely loads and loads and loads of it is complete rubbish. Let's take, for example, my own case with my own doctor. I was very, very fit. I wasn't overweight. Not everybody overweight is going to become diabetic. Diabetes is not linked to weight in that sense. Being overweight, and vastly overweight, is very, very bad for many conditions, including diabetes. But it's not that itself that makes you a diabetic. Nobody really quite knows why it's an autoimmune systems thing, so there's lots of little reasons why it triggers you. I myself caught mine, if that's the right word, through a pancreas infection. Well, my doctor vowed to me, who was a diabetic specialist, that couldn't happen. So I did my research, and in America I found that that they had already discovered that a pancreas infection can kill enough beta cells off to then make your pancreas slowly decline. In fact, a more apt term is to say it's dying, so I will eventually have to go on insulin. And then officially I'd become a type 1. I actually fit into type 1.5 because I have diabetes from 2 different directions. But I'll talk about that another day if anyone wants to hear about that. I'll make a video of that. And the next thing was that he said, and I can only vouch for doctors in the UK, this may not be true worldwide, but I suspect it will be, that they try and push the fact that testing your blood glucose is not really that important after a period of time. Well, clearly it's more important in the beginning, because you can basically test your blood after each meal and find out, about an hour after each meal, and you can find out which foods are pushing your glucose levels up. And so that's important to create this and write it down. And that's important to create a database of foods that you know work or don't work for you, more importantly. And you'd be surprised. It varies from person to person. I myself, I cannot eat white bread. White processed bread sends me through the roof. Yeah, I can happily eat carbohydrates like potatoes with no real problems. Even white pasta I can eat and not have too much problems. But you might find that it's reversed for you. White rice doesn't suit me very well. I mean, so it's a general thing that, there's general rules, but we are all individuals, so this is why it's important. The doctors will push you away from that too much, because basically the NHS, the National Health System in Britain, gives these little, what do you call them, the blood meters are given to you for free by the drug companies, and then you get the little testing strips. These testing strips are very expensive. And because they are given free to diabetics, the National Health System are told to try and push doctors away from using them so much. So what a complete lie, the hypocrisy of it. It's a lie. You need to be testing all the time. You don't need to be testing as much once you built your database up, but you should be testing every day to see where you stand. How do you know? How do you correlate how you feel with the blood glucose levels? It's just, you've got to have that. You've got to be doing it regularly. And so there's a lie there for starters. Another myth that gets thrown around, and I can only limit how long I can talk to you on this, so I can't go through them all, but another limit is that people call it sugar diabetes. It's got nothing to do with sugar really at all. It's all about how carbohydrates affect your body, how carbohydrates turn into glucose to be turned and be used as energy. And for some reason, your fat cells, which is normally type 2, don't absorb the glucose properly, and so you can't get at it. And you're either that or you're not producing enough insulin to be able to control it. I have it both ways, so that's why I'm referred to these days as type 1.5, but you don't hear many people using that terminology. So it's not called sugar. It was actually originally called sugar diabetes because people's urine smelt rather sweet, and it was immediately linked into sugar, and everyone thinks that sugar is the main. It's quite frightening the amount of people that go, "Oh, you can't have that, can you? Because that's got sugar in it." Well, yes, I can. It's not going to be good for me. It's going to spike my blood a bit, but just like it will yours. But it's not. That's not my problem. My problem is processed carbohydrates. And you could argue that sugar is a processed carbohydrate, of course, but having sort of a sweet after your meal is not healthy for anybody. But more so for us, of course. But you can't restrict your life down to not being able to do anything. Much worse to eat pastries and pies and things like that, and then the white breads, etc. But this is why you've got to work on these databases of your own self-information about your own personal diabetic condition, because this makes it much more powerful for you. But these common myths are what we are trying to get across to people in this group, and not secondary, but alongside it, we're acting as a support network. We're giving our own time. There's no money involved in this. We're not doing it. We're both marketers, and Gary also has another job, and but we're not doing this to try and monetize it anyway. There are points where I thought I might create a recipe book or something and put it up on Amazon. Well, I would then direct you to that, but it's not. We're not trying to make money out of this. We're giving our free time up to support people who are confused and worried or anxious about their condition, and give advice where we can. We're not medical experts, so you have to seek medical advice from your own doctor or health system. But we are diabetics and have been for 10 or more years, and so we do have a lot of knowledge about diabetes. In fact, I have studied diabetes for a number of years. That doesn't make me a qualified expert, so we have to be honest about that, and we have to say, look, check the information out that we give you as well, because sometimes it doesn't suit one person, suits another. But we want to get you away from the myths, and we want to be here as support to try and help as many people as we can feel sort of more comfortable with the condition, because you hear so many scare things, like blindness and losing limbs, and these are very, very high on the more people go blind and lose limbs, I think, than any other condition. But these are people who have extremely lost control. With sensible diet that suits you personally, with some exercise, regular exercise. You don't have to go mad. If you're a person who hasn't done much exercise, don't go out hammering up the road. You give yourself a heart attack. But just, regular exercise, even walking regularly, 20 minutes a day, will really help. And then with the use of modern medicine, like metformin and glycoside, and there are various other ones I haven't heard about that come up in the group. These sorry, there's a fly buzzing in my head. These medicines are very good at helping the control as well. Some promote the pancreas to kind of make more insulin, and others help glucose get absorbed into the fat cells. One more thing before I finish talking on here, because I'm really in 10 minutes now. is that you hear of a condition called pre-diabetes. Well, there is no such thing as pre-diabetes. There are some cases where someone who is vastly overweight, and this is where that overweight thing gets linked into diabetes. Some people who are vastly overweight, their fat cells start to not absorb glucose very well. So they actually do have what you'd feel is like diabetes. The same, the tiredness and all the rest of it. But they haven't actually got diabetes. Once you've got diabetes, you have it for life at the moment, until we think of a cure. But pre-diabetes, as they call it, which is really a false term, is the body behaving like it has diabetes. And there's no reason to suggest at the moment that those people go into having diabetes. But when these people lose weight, they find that condition, that those ailments change and that they go back to normal. And many people will bandy that around as I've beaten diabetes. I've cured my diabetes. It's not true at all. They were never diagnosed with diabetes. They were diagnosed with a condition that acts like diabetes, but it's because they're overweight. So there is a big difference between that. And it's worth noting that, because even newspapers and things will report it as, it can be cured. Unfortunately it can at this stage. But with careful management, you can control your diabetes and live a pretty much normal life. And it doesn't stop me doing a lot. And so that's a promise. So don't get all worried and het up, Come to us with as many questions as you have, and we'll do our best to answer them. And I'm sure other people within the group will act as support as well as they learn more information. So anyway, thanks for listening to this video, which has gone on for nearly 12 minutes and still short for me, but there you go. And I may put more videos up as we go along. Okay, thanks for listening.